right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started and just let people kind of wander in as they get here. There are handouts down here. If you didn't, you should have a white packet and also a green handout. And I wanted to just take a second and say hi. So I'm Dr. Melissa Floyd-Pickard. I'm the chair for the Department of Social Work at UNC Greensboro. And working with people with serious mental illnesses is one of my research areas and one of my passions I've been doing for a long time. And so I'm going to be the facilitator today. And I think we've got a really good panel for you. We have Dr. Michael Yuski, who is the pastor at College Park Baptist Church. We have Jody Lorenzo-Shively, who's the executive director at Sanctuary House. And we have Wes Alston, who is a member of Sanctuary House, and he's going to share some of his experience with us today, too. So we're excited about this. Did you have a question?
Yeah, well, when you talk about family caregiver burden, and we're talking about anybody that's taking care of someone who has chronic illness, having a burden, but I think because I have raised two children with mental illness, and one has bipolar disorder, that there's also a certain stigma that you get when you have a child with mental illness versus a child with cancer, or and so in some ways you are looked upon as a part of the problem.
Right.
And so that burden, carrying that part of it, diminishes the effectiveness of what you bring to the table as a parent, and some other things. So it just kind of puts you in a really difficult place as a parent of a child. It may be, could be hereditary, could be, a lot of different things. Some of the behaviors, there's an expectation that some out of the blue, you're supposed to know how to deal with mental illness because it's your child. So.
Right.
That's an interesting point.
That's a great point. And this is what we want to do. We want it to be, and this is a hard format with the lecture tiers like this for it to be, for you to feel like you can jump in, but please try to jump in. So, okay. So the need for reality testing often emerges with working with these folks, and that can be dicey because, like in the example I just gave, he said, Melissa, you're just paranoid. I said, yeah, now you're against me too, and it becomes more alienating than anything.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Can I ask a question of you when you speak about family and you speak about the stigma that you experience as a parent in that journey for you? I'm interested, I work at Sanctuary House, so I'm from a practitioner side, but I'm intrigued because the whole point of the conversation today is around religion and spirituality and the impact on mental illness. Where did you find your hope as a parent? And so did spirituality or religion help you?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because I'm a minister. But the funny part about that,
that's interesting.
The funny part is I separate my spirituality and actually my relationship with the church. It was two different things because the church, a lot of people automatically assume that the church just knows how to deal with everything. Mental illness is, nobody understands. Nobody's an expert. I don't care who you are, whether you're in the agency or professional in that. So while my spirituality, my relationship with God was very helpful, my relationship with the church was not. And so, and I'm not saying that all churches would have that kind of, but for the church that I attended, it was really difficult because they did not understand. They expected, I'm a spiritual person. They expected my prayers to be answered. They expected that the behaviors that my daughter exhibited, that I would be able to control those, and that I was doing something was, they didn't exactly say you're not praying hard enough, but it was clear that they thought that somehow I had failed. I'm a minister, for God's sake. My daughter's, one of her manifestations is language, if you know what I mean. So a minister with a daughter who's using language, they were like, what kind of minister is this? So those kinds of things. So.
That is a great point.
And
great point. Yeah,
please.
Just kind of throw it out there. I think a part of it from the church's perspective or from a biblical perspective is a lack of understanding of the message of the gospel. And that situation reminds me of an account, I want to say it's in Mark, where a father comes to Christ to seek help for his child that's experiencing some very abnormal behaviors. The Bible said that he would throw himself in fires and he would throw himself in water. And the fact that the father sought out help from a religious figure, Christ eventually healed the child, but he didn't frown upon the father for coming to seek out that help. And so I think that it is a place for mental health services, not to suggest that a pastor or a minister will be able to touch the child and the child will be healed. But not to say that it's not possible, but also to suggest that we, or folks in church, have to create the space and the dialogue to start to learn different strategies to address those issues, especially if the church is going to be a place where they'll be more receptive to receiving information that can help, with the situation that they're facing.
Absolutely.
And I see 3 hands, so I'll go 1, 1, 1.
Okay, I'm going to tell a short story from a Salvation Army officer that I knew one Sunday night. And this goes to sort of the difference between reality testing in the psychological world and the gospel message. So perhaps the difference between what we have to do as churches and what we may do as clinicians. So Captain Costas had someone who was obviously challenged in the front row of his Sunday evening service, and shortly after he started preaching the message, the hand goes up, and he answers the fellow's question, and shortly after that, the hand goes up again, and by the time the hand goes up the 3rd time, he says, look, there's a lot of people here who've come to hear what I prepared for them, so can we meet in my office after the service, and I'll answer all your questions. And the guy agrees to it and actually sits on his hands to keep them from going up. But after the service, they go to Captain Costas's office and start talking, and the fellow begins asking him a great many questions, and he finally says, look, I don't talk about this with everybody, but the aliens in my head have a question for you. The aliens in my head want to know, did Jesus Christ die for them? And Major Costas sits back and thinks. He says, well, Jesus Christ died once for all, and so I think yes, Jesus Christ died for the aliens in your head. And the man says, that's all I wanted to know. That's all we want. Sometimes reality testing isn't at the heart of the gospel.
Yeah. But you raise a good point about a skill that that we'll address in terms of when somebody is met with somebody who might be experiencing delusions or hallucinations. I mean, that right there, trying not to guide them away from those hallucinations, but working it into your own skill set, just like that question, would be exactly what we would recommend and suggest and touch on. So that's a great example of how to use spirituality and build hope for somebody and answer a simple question, and they didn't cause any grief or any damage at all. So exactly.
Okay. My thing is, and I'm sure this is hopefully we'll talk about it, is, everybody, it's more like the church. They do not know how to deal with some of the mental illnesses. It's pray, pray, pray. Let's everybody lay hands on you and pray. Which there is power in prayer, and we understand that. But I think that, kind of like the gentleman was saying, it's more of a education that the the pastors or the board members or whatever should be able to have, so that they can help those that have this illness, and that they can also help the congregation understand what they're going through. I have anxiety, and I take medicine, and I have paranoia too, but I've been on medicine for many years, and I sometimes I still get this like deep-seated feeling inside of me that, you know, somebody's, you know, looking at me, or not, they're gonna hurt me or anything. But I found out with that medicine and going to church, with my relationship with God, I didn't really have to talk to anybody else, but it would have been nice to have been able to reach out to someone in the church. But just with my relationship with the Lord and being there, it even helped me more. So I think that, that's a big issue in the churches, is that the pastors, they don't understand. They don't know how to reach out. They don't know what to say. And especially the congregation, because the congregation takes it lightly. I mean, with mental illnesses, they're like, I don't know if they just don't know how to take it, but it seems like they do take it, you know, very lightly. And it's not. It's a very real and important thing.
And I know that Michael that's one of his main points, is knowing when to triage, when to say, this is more than me, you know?
Right. I mean, I think that for a lot of people, whatever religious shaman your tradition is, if you're a pastor or a rabbi or imam or whatever, that people will often come to their religious shaman first. And so you become sort of the gatekeeper for these things. And I think the main thing that we as ministers owe our congregation is some sense of triage, to be able to recognize, all right, this is what's going on. Because everything that's endemic in a North American society is endemic in our congregations. You know, whether it's serious mental illness, or whether it's addiction, or sexual identity issues, or any of those things, they're all going on there. And so I think part of the skill of being a minister is being able to diagnose that there is a problem.
Right.
I don't mean diagnose in a formal sense, but there is. And then being able to triage that person, because, you know, if you're a part of any kind of religious community, you know that depression it's just, it's infecting so many people in our congregation. And you know that those are serious brain issues, and there's people there's professionals who are trained to deal with that. And so we as ministers need to help them into that, to know who can help with those issues, and to try to convince people that they're not, you know, letting God down, or the angels, or whatever, because they're seeking help. In the same way, if they had a broken arm, you know, we would want to send them to the, you know, ER room, and they would get treated. And so kind of convincing with that. So part of our role is to kind of overcome that denial that there's something wrong with them just because, you know, they have a serious mental illness, which we wouldn't feel like if, you know, they were discovering they were diabetic or something.
That is too another thing, you know, what people think of you. You know, like me, I never said anything to anybody. I mean, they never knew. That's why I said I wish I could have had somebody in my church that I could have gone to. But I wouldn't tell anybody because I didn't know what they would think of me. So